appreciate the Singapore Chinese Chamber of Commerce for inviting us here once again on this lovely Thursday morning to present to you enhancing virtual recruitment process. I hope everyone's staying safe, and I think with the whole pandemic situation sort of haven't really sort of tapered off yet. We have come to the realization that there is a new normal, and I think part of the new normal is that the recruitment process, as we see it, not just for MNCs and even so for SMEs like yourself as well, is that certain things have to change, right? We are unable to meet up face to face. We are unable to, do certain things where it requires a physical contact. But how do we then still sustain that sort of, both emotional connection? How do you also want to find the right candidate? And how do you also want to ensure the right candidate finds the right companies as well? And I think we hope to address all these issues, hopefully today. And I think also take some of your questions. And so with that being said, let's just kick off the presentation now. So if I may turn to the first slide, our guest speakers for the day, Mervyn Chai, Director of Kingfisher Recruitment Group, and of course our other guest speaker, really appreciate him for making time this morning as well. It's Craig Poming, the Group Head of HR for Times Publishing Limited. So a quick introduction first about myself. So my name is Sean. I'm also from Kingfisher Recruitment Group. I look after the digital and technology space for Southeast Asia. So that means any tech talents to do with your startups or your e-commerce or your professional services, I cover them. And my mentor, and I would say the MD of our company, Mervyn Chai, if I may do a quick introduction on him as well, has been the partner for Kingfisher Group for quite a number of years. And he has been in recruitment for many, many years. So he has lots of insights to share. And I think today he will be presenting through a couple of slides on, again, our opinion, our views on how do we make this recruitment process in this new normal better, more efficient, and I would say to a certain extent helps you accomplish your goal of finding the right candidates, as well as ensuring that your company also attracts the right candidates as well. Right, so with that being said, Mervyn, do you mind kicking it off?
Thank you, Sean. Appreciate the kind introduction there. And thanks, Zaxon, Emmeline, for making this happen again today. And Poming, our guest speaker, for taking time to share his point of views and experience. And I guess to really kick it off or start the process, I think we will start off with this question on what is the standard recruitment process. I guess it's pre-COVID, pre-virtual, what we have done. And it's just going to be a quick overview to give that premise to what we are doing virtually. And we hope that we can share that ideas that we have seen in companies across the industry on how they are enhancing their virtual process. Okay, so quick recap. I mean the standard recruitment process, we normally split it into 3 stages. The first one, of course, is the planning stage, where the recruitment process. You're defining the corporate vision, the culture, who's going to interview, the location, the facilities, and of course, point of contact to manage that process. Designing the JD is also equally important. What is that ideal candidate profile that you're looking for? And you're using competencies, behavioral traits, experience to create that requirements. And of course, budgets. Attraction strategies will be things like the job advertisements. Where are you putting that up? Recruitment agencies, are you outsourcing the recruitment process, and so on. Okay. Next, of course, we get into the interview process, the pre-screening stage, where you're assessing the CVs through keywords, type of companies, skills and achievements, and of course, the visual appeal of the CVs. And next, the interview process itself. You talk about interviewing your candidates, you're building rapport, explaining the company, the role, the expectations, and preferably using score sheets to create that consistency. And then offering the right candidate, providing the details of the offer verbally and written, negotiations, explaining the next steps in terms of signing the offer letters and all that, medical checkups. And of course, we shan't forget closing the loop with the unsuccessful applicants. Last but not least, it will be the onboarding stage, where you go through that checklist, what they had to go through during the first day and so on. And post onboarding, you talk about goal setting and really getting that new hire immersed in that culture of the company. Okay, so as you can see here, here's your standard, and what has changed from a virtual setting. So what is virtual recruitment? It's a quick definition here. It's a process where recruitment is done remotely with the help of technology. And what do you mean by this? And it's really what you are using from a virtual standpoint. The first one, of course, I think a lot of us are already using. So we are assimilating to the virtual environment already. Online job boards, advertising the roles online. It is very common now. Hardly anyone uses a newspaper anymore. I think 12 years ago, when I started recruitment, started my career in recruitment, we still had newspapers and we were posting ads on newspapers and so on. But I think now we have moved on. Very few is done on print in this case. So, and next, of course, video interviews, using an online tool to create that virtual face-to-face as opposed to just a phone interview. Virtual events, it could be a virtual open house, especially you're doing volume recruitment, where you invite a number of candidates, explain to them the role and all that, and then you break out into rooms where you can quickly assess candidates accordingly. Remote onboarding, I think, especially during the COVID period, a lot of companies who had candidates starting or during the lockdown, during the you can't really onboard them physically. How do you do that remote onboarding, getting their laptops and so on? So it has been a challenge, and I think a lot of companies has adapted to this as well. Online employer branding, I think this is one area that because we use a lot of our physical interaction from a recruitment standpoint to explain the company, to explain the culture, but now with that virtual environment, we need to emphasize on that employer branding. How do we create that premise up front rather than waiting for them to come to the office to meet you? Okay. So in essence, you have seen where we are going into from a physical standard process to a virtual process. So what are the key challenges, or you can say your common challenges that we face in this translation? Getting the right talent, regardless, it's always a difficult challenge. However, going into a virtual environment is even tougher. It's tougher because when you're doing it online, especially if you're just interviewing based on phone interviews and all that, it lacks that human connection from the face-to-face. It lacks that empathy to understand each other, and most importantly, to start that trust building relationship between an employer and employee. And that is the key part that is always missing. And virtually, how can we get that into place? Working with technology, of course, we have one of the highest internet reach globally in Singapore. We are lucky. In some parts of the developing countries or in rural areas, they may not be so lucky. So they have lack access to, you can say, stable internet connection. So making that online or virtual recruitment process even harder. And also, especially for those who are technology challenged, hiring managers or candidates who is adverse in using new tools or new technologies, and that can be a showstopper as well. Technical difficulties during using video tools and getting that up and running, learning how to use it, all that is a challenge with virtual recruitment. And what's the main difficulty here is really some may not want to embrace that technology. Third, the candidate experience. What we see is that candidates are unable to view or see the office, view or feel the culture of the office, the people, to view the surrounding amenities, what's available around here and there. It's almost like, if you want to buy a house and you don't see the house, you only see the pictures of the house, would you commit yourself to buy and purchase that property? It makes it very, very difficult. So that virtual sense, how can we bridge that gap will be important. And that's the big challenge here today. Last but not least is that onboarding process. You know, I mean, like what I said earlier, you know, when you're during the lockdown period, or when now 50% of our workforce can only be in the office. And when this comes into play, you're unable to sit down with your new hire. You can't take them through the company platforms, for example, the tools, the introductory team lunches or drinks. You know, that is always now a lot more difficult. Or sometimes having the fun of seeing them getting lost trying to find the pantry or toilet. You know, you can't have that presence anymore. So that makes it difficult. And how are we getting there? How are we solving that? And that's why we're here today. And really, how can we enhance that virtual recruitment process? So back to that stages of stage 1, stage 2, stage 3 of planning, in the interview stages and onboarding. Here are some of the ideas, or you can say some of the process improvements that a lot of companies that I've seen in the market are implementing, or trying to build it up, and it has shown to be effective. It's shown to create that the right experience that you're looking for when you get a potential candidate on board. So first, embracing video interview. A keyword here: embrace video interview. So tools like this are important. Next will be online employer branding. How do you create that culture upfront and explain to them? Second, during the second stage of the interview stage, using online assessment tools is critical nowadays, especially when it's harder to get that feel with the candidates. Onboarding, the last part, or what do you call it, pre-boarding nowadays, that meet and greet, how that digital meet and greet, how do you put that into play? And that experience is important. If you have a very tough onboarding session, typically a new hire will go through that process, and if they are not onboarded properly, the chances of them leaving is a lot higher. Okay, so let's take the first one. Some of these ideas that I've seen in the market, embracing video interview tools. Keyword here again, embrace. I mean, initially we may be uncomfortable, but you know, video interviews bring the most important dimension, part of your 5 senses, which is called the sight. And this is the closest thing that we can have to a face-to-face physical communication. And what this video interviews, it's now even more important. Okay, and in terms of the why I'm saying so, is that I'm not sure whether you have heard of this, a famous research conducted by Professor Albert Mehrabian. He identified the 3 V's of effective communication. I'm sure you have seen or heard it before. First V is the verbal, the words that you say, of course, and that is only 7% dominant in the communication process. Second is the vocal, the tone, the pitch, the volume, the pace of your communication, and that is where it increases up to 38% of that communication process. Last but not least is that visual, that body language, that eye contact, that expression, and it takes up 55% of that communication process. So using only, for example, a phone interview process, you can only get up to that 45% limit of communicating and creating that impression that you want with potential candidates. So the lack of visual is where it stops you from bringing them forward. So again, video interviews are a must right now. I've seen everyone translating to that and making it a key component in their process. And if you ask me what can you use, there are multiple tools out there. One would be like Zoom, what we are using right now, Microsoft Teams, WebEx, Skype. I mean, these are all common tools available for everyone. Some are even using WhatsApp or WeChat or even Line videos, but I mean, personally, I think this should be used only as a backup due to the fact that the professionalism that comes with it is lacking sometimes. But I think going into a more corporate tool would be better. What I would advise in this sense is that especially if you're new to using this kind of video tools, test it out, practice it internally, have a lot of virtual video team meetings in the company, promote it, embrace it as a culture. Or some, you can even use it with your family. I think during the lockdown, I mean, my family, we were doing a lot of video chats rather than phone chats, because you want to bridge that gap. Okay. Second, in terms of the planning stage, the online employer branding. When you define your employer brand and culture, or you can say the employee value proposition, that EVP, some call it, then promote it online. Create that engaging career site, as this is the first place all your candidates go to research about your company. I mean, you can keep it very simple, keep it engaging, keep it fun, an infographic about your company, share stories about the people, meet the team, either photos, videos, their journey with the company, have event videos or photos to show the connection with the team and all that, some of these CSR projects that you have done. So that creates that representation of the company into the public. So and that is important, especially when a lot of times, especially candidates who don't know your company are going to they can't see you they can't see you physically, they can't see the company, so they need to understand that before they get there. I think one company even did a virtual. Some companies are doing video office tours, which is interesting. I think I mean, of course, it gives that understanding of how the office looks like, what's available around the office, and so on, and even using virtual reality tools. I think this was done with one of the projects done by GSK, GlaxoSmithKline, when they were doing a promotion of their new office. So social media platforms, we must not forget the importance of social media in recruitment. Sharing photos of teams, events on Instagram, on LinkedIn, Facebook, you've got your company profiles there. That creates that first impression of the business, that employer brand, the culture that you want to put together, and that will be important. Okay. So let's move on to the interview process. I mean, what can we do from an interview process? Especially you talk about when you can't meet them face to face, you can't assess one key component, that the personality traits, because in an office environment and we're meeting face to face, you get the chemistry built between the manager and the candidate and all that, and that feeling is important. But what you can't do, especially sometimes in virtual environment, is that connection. So how can we understand the candidate better? And that is where this online assessment tools comes into play. What I mean by online assessment tools, it could be, I mean, some of us have been using it in a lot of our recruitment process as well, but are we using it structurally? Are we using it in a good framework? That needs to be improved. So a little bit about a research done by Schmidt, O, and Schaefer in 2016. They did a research on utilizing assessment methods to predict job performance. And when they see age as a requirement, it normally has 0% prediction of job performance. Graphology, or you can say handwriting patterns to predict personalities, is only 2%. Years of education is only 10%. And years of job experience, some say I've got 15 years experience, 20 years experience versus 5 years. Yes, the prediction of job performance is only 16%. So personality tests, if used effectively, will give you a good 40%. Structured interviews, the keyword here is structured, especially you're using, what I mean by this is more of the structured questions that's consistent across all your candidates that you're interviewing, the score sheets that you're using to really create fair and systematic process. And that gives that 58% chance of job performance, successful job performance. GMA test gets you 65%. GMA means the general mental ability test. So you talk about like verbal reasoning, logical analysis, reasoning and all that. And if you combine the test with interviews and all that, it gets you up to 78%. So with this, you can see the research shows a very strong link between the general mental ability test, the personality test, structured interviews to job performance. And you want to bridge that gap. You want to hire right candidates. You want to hire people who can come in and perform. And this will be important. So what kind of tools? I will say there's multiple types of tools out there in the market. Some of the common ones are DISC model, which is using the D for dominance, I for influence, S for steadiness, and C for conscientiousness. So this behavior assessment tool tries to find where's your dot, or you can say where's your dot on this model. So it could be your dot is near the S or near the I area. So you have a mixture between the different types of personalities, or even a very dominant I, for example, and all this can be used in predicting the type of person and also the suitability of that candidate to your team or your company. Essentially, it's not about just one person, it's about us and how does that dot represent in that whole chart for you in the company and the team members as well. So how you use the DISC model can be a good tool. What we do, especially for ourselves internally in Kingfisher, as well as for some of our clients, we use the Opto and ACE test. Opto is a Big 5 personality assessment that we use to match criteria that we have created to scores of what the candidates when they have taken the test. So it's a behavior assessment tool. So sometimes like we are looking for candidates who has a very high innovation. And of course, from this score overview, you can see that the innovation score chart is very low. So we know that this is not the right candidate. Or if you're looking for someone who's very strong in operations, very strong in delivery and all that, this will be an ideal candidate. Okay. On the right, we have the ACE, what we use for matching a person's logical, analytical reasoning to the demands of the job. So this is that general mental ability test. And what we can see, some of the numeric ability, whether they have a good logical analytical skill sets and all that. And this is especially useful for very complex roles, senior level roles where the mental ability is very important. So, and we adopt this test for ourselves as well in terms of our internal recruitment. Okay. Moving on, last part would be the onboarding process, and I guess the focus is no longer on day one to onboard, but it is really before that, before the start date. And some are calling it pre-boarding in terms of what you want to do before the candidate starts. So a great onboarding experience requires, you can say, frequent, consistent, and tailored communication from the moment an offer is made until the first day. I mean, that is always key, especially when they're serving their notice period. You want to make sure that the connection is there, and they don't go into that phase of taking counter offers and so on. So how do you create that? Some of the examples that we have seen will be engaging tailored content, where you can send videos or photos of the office, surrounding amenities, where are the lunch places, where's the gym around the area, and so on. You create that want for the candidate to go to the office, to see the office, to get a initial feel of the office already. So that will be an important tool. The other one will be the digital meet and greet. So I mean, a lot of us now, we can't meet in a large setting, and sometimes you can't have that introductory lunches or dinner, drinks. So what a lot of people are doing is, before that, they're using video to connect with new hires, to meet the team, have that casual conversation, understand each other, and making them being part of the team even before they start with the company. Last but not least, I'm sure all of you don't mind receiving parcels and gifts delivered to your home. So likewise, home delivery, send the company laptop before they start. You know, let them see what they have, staff pass, you know, all that. And some are even providing welcome gifts. Welcome gifts, I mean, it could be company like your company T-shirts or something like that, marks and so on, and really send it to your new hire doorstep, and it instantly improves that connectivity with that new hire, and that's what we want to achieve. So here are that 5 ideas or what we can do from a virtual recruitment standpoint. So the fundamentals of virtual recruitment has always been the same as what you have been doing, but the only difference from this is moving things from the physical to online. And what's important here is the thing that will create that experience for your candidate is really the technology. You need to make sure technology is your friend. Technology shouldn't be the one that stops you from getting there, especially in the online world. Embrace it and use it efficiently, effectively. Making it engaging. A lot of times when we use a lot of technology, we lose touch, we lose that engagement. So always bear in mind to keep it engaging, keep that connection there. We can easily use the technology, but if we lose the engagement, that's where it stops you from getting there. Creating the virtual culture. I think this might be the tough one, especially when a lot of us are not used to the video or virtual environment. We like to see face to face. We like to have our meetings in boardrooms and all that. We need to change that. So even before the COVID period, when I'm managing my teams in Malaysia or in elsewhere in China, what I've been doing even pre-COVID was really to get the team to use videos during team meetings and all that. Initially, it's always a little bit tough, you know, lack of a better term, you know, very gao wei, you know, in that sense. But everyone gets used to it very quickly. I mean, humans, we're very adaptive. So once you create that, now when we are not using videos in our conversation, it feels a little bit lacking already. So the video interviews and video connections and all that creates that bridge. Last but not least, keeping it human. I mean, we're all humans. We want, we can't sit away from others and all that. We need to build that bridge. We need to build that connection. It's not just the words and all that. It's the feelings. And to sum it up in this, I like this quote from Maya Angelou, who says that I've learned that people forget what you say, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. So that human connection, we must not forget how to make that process human, create that connection, create that impression, create the feelings that you are trying to achieve using the tools and technology. And that will enhance that process for you and build that, bridge that gap. All right. So that's the last part of the presentation. We will go into the Q&A in a moment. A little bit brief about Kingfisher. So what we do, we are a global provider of total recruitment solutions, from executive search to recruitment process outsourcing under faculty brand. We have a staffing services under Gallup and the career mobility transition programs under the Talent Scout umbrella. So in terms of what we mean by providing that holistic total solution is creating the end-to-end HR solutions for you and your company. And that is number one, of course, the search process. Our consultants specialize in a very specific industry or function, and to enable us to provide that in-depth market knowledge and that high-touch service to you. Second, of course, the recruitment process outsourcing. I mean, sometimes we don't want to do with the volume and all that, and that's where we help engage with our clients to design that process, to help from that volume perspective, to optimize that process, be it either offline or now virtual, is very important, and we are helping our clients from that perspective as well. Third, staffing. I'm sure now with the COVID, we have seen also an uptrend of staffing, where head counts are very limited. Creating the head counts, the budget for it, approval process are taking longer. So a lot are going into contractors and all that, and we are providing that as a solution as well. Fourth, last but not least, is the career mobility and transition. How you are doing your reorg. We help companies with that, career development and coaching, change management, and of course, executive coaching. So that sums up in terms of our total solution, that holistic total solution that we offer to all our companies, our clients in this case. Okay. Sean, back to you.
Great.
Thank you very much.
So much for that, Mervyn. So we're moving on to the second part of our webinar today, where we are into the panel discussion, where this is the part where we invite Po Meng. So Po Meng, thank you for still staying with us. So just a quick introduction for Po Meng, and Po Meng, feel free to add on more details when I pass it over to you. Po Meng is the group head of HR for Times Publishing. Of course, for many of you, Times is a very I would say heritage brand. At the same time, it's also a very progressive brand. I've seen Times as the bookstore where I go at for my assessment books, for my story books. And I think Times, whether you know it or not, is also invested in several other companies where they publish different book titles. And his experience spans from both smaller companies to also big companies, not just in terms of the market cap size of the company, but also in terms of the manpower size. And I think he is one person that's sort of, seen the transition of HR across many different, okay, not say many different, but a couple of generations at the very least. And I think he's someone that can also advise on what are the trends that he has seen before, the trends today, and potentially the trends moving forward. So on that note, Po Meng, do you mind maybe just adding on your introduction as well?
Sure. Thank you, Sean, for that very nice introduction. Yeah, so actually, when it comes to experience, every era is actually quite different. Yeah. It is also my first time running through this whole COVID situation. And I think through the Q&A session later, we can learn a lot more how we can actually make this whole working place a far better working place for everybody, and how we actually overcome the challenges that we're facing in a virtual world where we need to continue to recruit people, or I've seen some of the Q&A, the right people, and some of the challenges that we're actually facing. So we probably can kickstart the next section.
Great.
Back to you, Sean. Thank you very much.
No worries. So Mervyn, you're also with us now. So this is the panel discussion where I'll pose a couple of questions to both Mervyn and Po Meng as well. And I'll get their views on a couple of topics. And I think that being said, while that's happening, I would like to implore the audiences to send in your questions, right? Whatever, we are getting a couple of questions right now, about 5 or 6 of them. I would love for you to, if there's anything that comes to mind, please ask it. Now is your time. We do have the time to take your question. We hope to also answer all of your questions this morning as well. So please do not hesitate on that. Okay, so while we are waiting for the questions to come in, so first question I may ask the panelists, both Po Meng and Mervyn. In your own personal experience, and of course your experience, which is far, way more than me, what are some of the common mistakes, in your opinion, done in recruitment, both past and present, and what principles of recruitment should still remain the same even as we move into this new normal of virtual hiring? Who wants to go first?
Hoping you can
Maybe I go
do the
first.
kick off, the start.
I think common mistakes you can literally say broad category, like in the past. Actually, it still happens today. I should say mistakes actually happen in the past, it also happen today. One of it is having either a very long laundry list of what you actually require from the candidates. Well, everybody is out there to look for the perfect candidates. And then ended up, whether you're doing it virtually, you're doing physically, you'll find that it takes you a very long time and you get very rejected or very dejected that how come you cannot find the right candidate, you know? So one of the things I always share is there are no perfect candidates.
Mm-hmm.
So you just look at yourself or ourselves. Are you perfect in the first place? Are you running a perfect company? Is this a perfect world? So there's nothing perfect. So also in a reality world is that really sit down with the hiring managers to determine what are really the must-have qualities of the people you are looking for, the talents that you need, and what are the good to have. So that eventually you won't split hair, you know, that you're looking for something that is really not available in the market. So that's sort of one common things when I move from one company to another, big or small. They told me the same thing. And I always tell them the same thing. If you are perfect, I'll look for you the perfect candidate. But then what is perfection? Right. So actually this is like a timeless thing people look for. Whether you're a big company, small company, you are foreign multinationals, you are local, we all want the same thing, but it doesn't happen that way. So we have to be, one thing, also be realistic. Okay, that's one. Two is also looking at the market availability. Of course, now there are a lot more job seekers than companies who are hiring. But when the situation starts to turn around, then it can be a very different thing. All right, it's a matter of what are the priorities you choose and what are the availability of candidates in the market. Sometimes there are a lot more, sometimes there are a lot less. And there are certain industries like F&B, it's really difficult to hire people. Okay, because yes, it is a tough industry to be in. Therefore, and if you are already in a very tough industry and you're still looking for the perfect chef, the perfect connoisseur, the perfect waiter, versus hiring them and focus on your training and your cultural orientation. So it's a bit of a switch where you want to start off. Right? If you're thinking of, I get a perfect candidate, so no need to train, no need to develop, the person can be immediately plug and play. Again, in a realistic world, no, it doesn't happen that way. It rarely happens actually in my whole close to 20 years. It almost never happened. Even for very, very senior positions, they need certain level of induction, they need certain level of phasing in. As far as even someone as a general manager needs to have that kind of process as well. Yeah. Mervin, you have something to add?
No, I think I mean I echo that. The common mistakes, I mean, every company goes through is trying to find that unicorn. I like to use the word unicorn all the time. It's a fairy tale. It's a fable animal. The existence is non-existent. That there's no such thing, and really it's to drill down that requirements, that checklist. What is that top three? What's the most important? And go through that. And the other part of the common mistake, I think one part is that the interview training. It's almost I mean almost all of us when we conduct interviews of potential candidates, a lot of us don't go through that of structured training process. How do you run a structured interview? How do you run a situational ask situational behavioral questions and all that? A lot of us don't go through that. We pick it up along the way. Some get better at it. Some do their homework. Some, I mean, a lot don't do that, and it creates that biasness where we fall into the trap of using chemistry as the most important benchmark of assessment. whether the person, you're very numb with him or not, or something like that. But is that person really suitable for the role? That's the other part that oftenly get missed out when we don't do a proper interview. Yeah. So I think that common mistake, past, present, and even the future, needs to be rectified. Needs to be managed in the sense. Yeah.
I think one of the things, if I may add on to that, Mervyn, you mentioned this to me that when you do an interview, and recently we did some interviews as well, that there is that team fit, there's that culture fit, and there's also that competency fit. I think most people are very, it's easy to know that, oh, as long as, the guy looks good on paper, let's put him in. Or as long as that guy can get along with me, let's put him in. So as you rightly mentioned, I think with our SME target audiences, most of the time, I think to a certain extent, they like to hire people that are like them naturally, right? So how does one ensure, and you talk about this in the interview process, about this thing called not just a company culture fit, but there's also that team fit component, which some people might, I would say, have that blind spot on. Do you mind elaborating more on what you shared with me before?
I mean, team fit, culture fit, that is, I mean, we all try to find that, minimize the risk of hiring, getting that almost perfect candidate to fit all the boxes. And what we want to do is to have as many tools as possible to answer that question. And it could be using all that personality tests and criteria to find out what's that fit. And also things like their background, their company backgrounds that they work in, what kind of environment. We need to learn how to ask the right questions as well. Often or not, I mean, that's where it goes back to that interview training. A lot of us ask very basic questions, but do we ask that in-depth question to answer those questions? When you talk about companies, what kind of environment? And you talk about team fit. Do we really understand your current team dynamics? Where is it at? Is it from a theoretical standpoint? Everything goes through the forming, storming, norming, and performing stages, and that cycle repeats itself. So which stage is that team in? And understanding that concept, you find people who can fit that perception as well, fit that stage. Because some may not even go through, the stage of performing before. So you're hiring people who can come in and perform. They may not know how to, especially in a team, especially for managers. You're trying to hire managers who doesn't understand that. So I think that is part and parcel. Is going back to the tools that you can use to get the fit, the training of the managers to hire effectively. Yeah. Poh Meng, any thoughts on that?
Actually, yes, I also echo that. I think there are, I think actually it is human nature. There's really also nothing wrong for people to hire their own kind, people that they like. Simply, I think it fits better. So it actually boils down to what kind of team spirit you want to build.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to build a team whereby it thrives on bouncing off of many different ideas, then probably you wouldn't want to hire your own kind or own type, those with same personality, same thinking. But if you're really talking about building a very harmonious team, seriously, based on the DI-SC profiling, you wouldn't want to hire people who are DI versus the SC and put them together, because they will not talk to each other. Because the DI will dominate everything, the SC will just keep quiet, and behind the back, they'll play politics. And then as the team leader, you're in trouble because you will be managing such diverse subgroups within your group. And what I can see is a lot of managers are then not very comfortable in managing this kind of conflict, this kind of team dynamics, because it entails many other things about bringing them together. Sometimes you get into conflict management, sometimes you get into team management, so much more management to deal with. Just at the beginning, you thought you wanted people with different ideas. But maybe you can find different people with similar personality traits, but also are creative in their thinking. So it does not necessarily mean it must be the same personality traits, but it's the kind of skill, the kind of mental scalability that they have, and you put them together, then maybe you have sparks, not fire, you know, that you start to burn each other off.
Okay, thanks for that analogy, Po Meng. I think that's also a good segue. That I think what you have described is, of course, the ideal situation of finding the right person that is also the right fit for the organization. Now, with this whole new, we're in this whole virtual hiring stage or virtual recruitment stage in the current pandemic conditions. Can I ask, I think for both speakers, I think, Po Meng, you have experience across a breadth of companies of different sizes. What challenges do you face in implementing that change into this whole virtual hiring or this whole virtual recruitment mentality? Maybe you can also share what you feel are work in progress, and how are you intend to resolve some of the challenges that you might deem you're currently facing. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Actually, from my experience, my own analysis is this: when you are in an environment, for example, in the past when I worked with foreign multinationals, in fact, a lot of the hirings, even up to 12 years, 13 years ago, they started virtual hiring.
Yep.
Okay. They have gotten to the reality that is it very economical for them to fly from the States all the way to Singapore just to interview a candidate? So what they do is they do a lot more video conferencing. At that time, we call it video conferencing. Psychometric testing. So they also do things like peer interviews, then looking at a lot more of what you have to offer.
Yep.
Versus until today. And so actually for the last so-called 10 years, that virtual part hasn't really picked up. So I must say, actually, I share with my colleagues, sometimes I'm quite thankful to COVID-19 that forced everybody else to go virtual, you know. And if without this whole pandemic and the crisis situation, I think even in a setup like Time, which is both modern as well as traditional, it could have taken me another 10 years to implement this. So now I should say part of it is sometimes we also have to make the internal analysis about what choices do we have. When you don't have choices, then you will face the reality. And when you're faced with reality, you make the best out of it. Like what Mervyn said, actually it's not a very difficult process, but if you practice and used it, right, then you'll find that you are actually more in tune to get into this kind of mode of hiring. So the challenges, I should say, there are a lot less now. So in a way, it may not even be so relevant to start asking whether, do we still face challenges to implement changes in the organization about moving from the physical to the virtual. We're all forced to do it. We all don't have a choice, right? Of course, except with certain industries. Of course, I have a friend who asked me, I'm hiring a chef. How do you taste the food? I said, don't ask me that question. You know, you have to taste the food, then you taste the food. You find a way to go and taste the food. You know, but most of us don't face with that kind of. Like I say, there are exceptions, and it is then for the stakeholders to really come up with more creative solutions to see. What I say is maybe as a pre-screening, you ask the person to whip up a meal on video and you look at it. You know, cook and describe. What are the condiments you add in? When do you add in? How long do you take to cook that particular thing? Of course, that you can only utilize one of the senses, which is looking at. And the other one is hearing. You can't taste it. So you can't, you still will not bypass the problem. I can't taste the sampling, the sample of the food, which I eventually are going to serve to the customers. Then at the end of it is, yes, you may not be able to find 5 cooks to come and cook for you. You may only eventually invite 1 or 2. Okay, so there are problems. It's not that all the problems will be resolved, because a lot of F&B, they also hire chef from Malaysia. They cannot come at the moment. So it's not something we can help, because there's a government structure that is beyond anybody, right? And it's a global thing about travel restriction. It's not something we're trying to find And I'll be very honest, when even my friends ask me, I told them I don't have a solution for that because the borders are closed. Full stop. That's the end of it. Look for your talents inside here. Find whoever you can find on this island. And don't think about, so sometimes it's, from the geography point of view is we used to look out, okay, maybe you find somebody from China, we can find chef from Malaysia. It's now that options are no longer available. Then maybe you can find all these on this island. What can you do? Maybe you need to go and snatch, maybe you need to go and steal. No, I mean enticed away. In a more HR word, enticed away from other companies to join you.
All fair in love and war, right? Okay.
Yes.
Mervyn, anything else you want to add to that answer? Yeah.
I mean, I think what Pomei has said is we are bound all by that limits. COVID has forced us to get into that situation, and I guess in a way improving all forms of productivity from a tech standpoint, and how we can fine tune it. That is the challenge. That the gap was always that those who are in the comfort zone, those who resist change. Those are I mean, in a marketing sense, it's called the laggards, right? Those who are the resisting of change and all that. How do we inculcate and get them to embrace that new change? Yes, sometimes you got to force it out. Sometimes you just got to put them into play, get their buy-in and all that. So it's a lot of internal. I mean, this is literally a change management process that you need to put in place in the company, and someone who has experience in doing that will help to create that buy-ins and all that. Yeah. And I think what you asked about what work in progress and all that.
Yep.
The end, that work in progress is really is that mindset. How do you change that mindset, that resisting mindset? Either you start to hire people who has that adaptive mindset as well. I think that would be key. I saw one question also, how do you hire people who's always willing to learn, has the attitude to learn, and if you want that, because they are the ones that will drive change. They are the ones that will absorb and learn. So if you ask me how to assess that, it is not easy to assess it just based on simple conversations. You've got to have multiple tools that can help you get there. First is really the type of questions you ask, asking situations that shows that they are willing to learn, things that they have learned, new things that have learned in the last 1 year, for example. Because when we always say, what's the new things that you learned in your career, often we take the one that we learned 10 years ago or something like that. But when you push them to answer what's the thing that you learned in the last 1 month versus 1 year ago, is there something that they've learned? And if there's something that they've learned and how they put it to action, there you can see the little thoughts, little mindsets of someone who has that continuous learning mindset, who's always challenged by that. Some personality profiles or psychometric tests can give you answers to it, but of course you need both hand in hand. You need to get that personality test and then check with questions, examples and answers from there. And that's where you can find that people that you're looking for with that right mindset. Yeah.
Great. I think it's I think to Poming's point, you cannot resist the change, and if you do resist it, you literally at this point in time you don't have a choice, right? It's very unfortunate to read in the news that more and more companies, are sort of going under because of the stress that COVID brings. And I think recently a business owner told me that COVID literally is your digital officer. It forces everyone to think digital or to sort of react to this new change. And I think talking about change, right? I think one of the pointers you mentioned earlier was finding that unicorn that I think Pomei mentioned, that common mistakes, that laundry list of things that you want in an ideal candidate. But because change is the only constant, as cliche as may sound, what you want in a candidate suddenly could change in the next 3 months, depending on the economic conditions or the global conditions, right? Things are even more uncertain than ever before. And I think that's also a good segue into my last question to the panel speakers before we take more questions on the floor. It's about the future. right? If change is the only constant, then what can we sort of look forward to the future? What can we plan? How can we plan for the future? I mean, and some of the questions I've seen so far is, how long do you think COVID will last? You know, what are the key HR skills that is required post-COVID, if there's such a thing called post-COVID, right, at this point in time? So in your thoughts, I mean, my question to two of you, what are your views for future trends, you know, for companies doing HR or recruitment? Do you have any thoughts on whether, you know, you're no doctors, but I wouldn't ask the question, when do you think COVID will end? But rather than when COVID will end, when, assume that the worst case, right? Let's always assume worst case, right? How can we sort of, you know, build up that defenses or that mindset to prepare for the future? And in your opinion, what is the future in terms of companies, for businesses, and for HR? Yeah.
Well, this is a very tough question, you know, and I think, I don't know what the future is like. Yes, I saw the question. I don't, actually, my initial response, I don't have a crystal ball. So actually, even in a lot of very senior government leaders, they may not have the idea too, but we can prepare for it, I think.
Maybe you can comment on the breadcrumbs. What breadcrumbs do you see? What signs do you see? Clues, yeah.
Clues with regards to what? Sorry.
Like, what do you think the future might bring?
I think, if you ask me, I'm a more optimistic person. I hope that we still go back to the norm of the pre-COVID days. And that there are a few preconditions of that. One, that has got to have universal availability of the vaccine.
Yep.
Effective vaccine. Not the kind of vaccine that say they jab for 3 months and then it's gone. I'm not going to go for 4 jabs in a year, right? And I not know whether it works or not. And because the clinical trial, and Mervyn, you know very well, clinical trials, some of the companies are only going to the stage 3. We just barely started with humans. So it may take a while. I mean, now I think a lot of the vision is just, we don't have huge vision. We just want to go back to the pre-COVID days. That's about it. And then we move on from there. But from an HR perspective, I think what it will change is very likely, if we talk about a lot of virtual, then we have to think for ourselves, what can be literally taken over virtually without human intervention? One of it is really candidates, talent selection. AI can do that. Right. Asking the first few basic questions, AI can also do that. So for HR practitioners like us, or even hiring managers, we have to ask ourselves, then what is our value in the whole process? In moving days where machines these days where they call AI, because they're machines, they can learn. And that's the most beautiful or most dangerous part. They can learn. So they learn their own mistakes and what is workable, what is not workable. They continue to collect data and analyze those data and find that they can actually find candidates for you that are very closely matched to your requirement based on data analysis. They can even do trend analysis for you. They can do predictive. So what is then our value in that? So our value add is one part of it. Back to the last slide on what Ms. Angelo said about people will not forget how you make them feel. So it's the question is, how do you make the candidates feel from the point whereby they start off from the pre-onboarding to the whole interview process, to onboarding, to sometimes even post-onboarding. If you have the tools, if you have the processes to make them feel great, then I think you still have a role to play. All right, because machines cannot give you the human touch. But the dangerous part is sometimes we work too long, we behave like machine, we don't have the human touch. Whereas, you know, the other way is machine is trying to build to become the human touch, you know. So in one of the slides is that also one of the very good onboarding practices, really you send them a welcome gift. And I think a lot of all these welcome gifts, whether it's a bouquet of flowers, a pot of plants or something, it actually touches people's heart. But not forgetting, AI can also order that bouquet of flower for you and send to the address without humans. So what can human do? Human can craft a very beautiful, a very heartwarming welcome message. Human can make a call, can have a virtual call to say, hey, have you received the things, we would like to have a virtual meeting with you. How's your first day? That kind of stuff. Maybe machines still cannot do it. They can do it, but in a more mechanical way. And what are the questions you would like to ask? Yes, but now they're also chatbot. So everything I say, I can also erase with my own answers. The machine can do it. So I think the thing is, practitioners, then we shouldn't touch our human, we shouldn't lose our human touch. We shouldn't lose our heart in dealing with all these people. At the end of it, humans still like the interaction with humans. Because from the lockdown to the post-lockdown, we all can see, right? The moment the circuit breaker is lifted, everybody rushed out to meet friends, to meet the loved ones, to meet the relatives. Why? Because we miss that. So as HR practitioners or as managers, we have to ask ourselves, what is it that we can make them feel warm? What is it that we can make candidates feel welcome? Whether it's virtual or whether it's in real life. And always at the back of our head, knowing that a lot of things we do, AI can do it. Sounds
scary.
Comforting coming from the optimist.
I think before we go into the Terminator series or something, I think I agree with Pomeng as well from that perspective, that human touch, and that's what all the slide is for today. Virtually, a lot of technologies, tools can be made to add value, to improve productivity and all that, but the human touch must never go. And it's interesting, Pomeng, you said that we are trying to behave like machines, and we are trying to build machines to behave like humans. And we must not lose touch of ourselves in that sense. So I guess, I mean, if you ask me about the future, no one has a crystal ball. We only have to prepare as business leaders. We build our business based on scenarios, on optimistic scenarios as well as pessimistic ones, worst case scenarios, best case scenarios, and we maneuver based on that propositions. And from there, we align what we want to do, prioritize the resources to go into the most effective solutions for those scenarios, and really hope for the best.
All right. Okay, thank you both of my panelists for that. So on that note, I'd like to just dive deeper into some of the questions that were asked by the audience members. I think one of the key things that came out in the first few questions was, as we talk about all this machines taking over, and of course there's a lack of human touch, very most unfortunately. And because of the lack of human touch, right, how do we ensure the credibility of our candidates during the virtual recruitment process? So take, for example, if I'm answering an online test, there's nothing stopping me from getting my friend to sit next to me and do the test together, right? It's like doing an open book test in an exam. There's nothing stopping me from having a Wikipedia or having a notes or someone telling me all the answers while I respond to the interview live through Zoom. So you see there are many different ways candidates can sort of circumvent, or leverage on the fact that it's virtual recruitment to look better to a certain extent and to even sound better. So how do you, sort of mitigate against such, sort of suspicious activity? Yeah.
I think that question was from I think Lai Mei and an anonymous one, in terms of how do we use that assessment tools? How do you ensure credibility and truthfulness?
Yeah.
I mean, it's easy to lie during this kind of test, but to keep that consistency throughout the process, it is hard. And the point here in terms of assessment tools, right, is a tool. It's not a decision making point. Okay, it can be a decision making point to weed out, to reduce that number of people you want to see, but eventually, and you still need to have that video connection or that face-to-face interviews with that kind of questions to assess those the results of those tools, and to assess whether they are credible, to ask for examples, to ask for to provide situations and see whether do they react based on that results that you've seen. So it's finding that reinforcement to what you're looking for, because you can't take everything wholesale. I mean, with the dawn of fake news, right? We need to learn how to see through things that looks dubious. Okay, and then we ask questions. So having the capacity to ask good questions, right questions, and repeat it in different ways, that is how you find credibility, and that's how you understand the person even more.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think my take on assessment is exactly. I think I've learned a lot of lessons from all these online assessments, even in-person assessments. I mean, we have spent many $1,000s trying to send senior candidates through a one-day assessment center, and we still fail, you know. So it is a lot to do with, are you asking the right questions? Are you finding the right information that you want? Versus, you see, this also boils down to the first question. What were the common errors in recruitment? You're not asking the right questions, right? And sometimes, you know, I don't know who is interviewing who. I think it's the interviewer who talk a lot more. In fact, interviewer should just be asking questions. Interviewer should be answering the questions. And asking really dwell more in depth into what they do and what you hope or you're expecting the person to do. And, you know, save time also. This is one of the errors. Don't ask those useless questions. If you ask me, I'll be very candid. Asking questions is tell me about yourself. Oh my goodness. Sorry to the audience, but that is like a complete waste of time. You tell me about yourself. You have the CV in front of you. You could have pre-screening. You know, there are a lot of questions. If you do research online, you don't have to ask all these questions. You ask them about what have they been doing, how do they do it,
what's the achievement?
what is your achievements, right? If you come to this kind of situation in a company, how will you approach it? You know, even to the point of how would you manage situations, how you manage people who have different opinions, and how do you manage yourself in the terms of your own scalability in terms of skills and knowledge. And these are the questions you should delve deep into. All right, the old questions. In fact, if you ask me, so the one that say worry about virtual, right? And I tell you, if you ask all those very standard questions, there are also a lot of very good model answers online. There are even YouTube videos and teaching you how to answer all these questions, but tell me about yourself. And I tell you, the candidates that appear very sleek must have done a lot of research.
Yeah.
So there are tools, yes, but back to the same thing. Tools, they are supplementary. And they should really, for me, we only use them for really development purposes, for future development of the person, rather than helping us to make decision on whether we're hiring the right person or not hiring the right person. Okay, so if you look at the statistics, those who depended on that assessment to make the right decision is less than half the success rate. So you wouldn't want to bank something on that to make a hiring decision. Is that a good tool? Yes, it is good only if you used it, I think, in so-called the correct way. But if you try to relegate that decision making to that tool, then you're definitely on the wrong path. Because there's no tool that will help you do it. I've tried many tools, honestly. And each has its own strengths and weaknesses. I even use a tool with a lie detector. I'm sure some of them will like it. There's a lie detector inside.
I wonder what job is that, man, the lie detector.
No, it's still an online assessment tool. It's still an online assessment tool. But what the so-called lie detector is trying to detect the discrepancy or the inconsistencies in your responses. So for example, in one of it is they're asking, are you a commercially minded person? Do you have P&L and all this stuff in your head?
Yeah.
Then they also ask questions about how, if you're commercially minded, so they also ask questions in a very succinct way about your relationship with charity, how charitable you are, what kind of good cause you have in your heart. So they, this is an assumption the person made that if people have these two kind of traits, they are mutually exclusive. So maybe one of it is not true. So you have got to go and find out that through the interview, if they ask the question, yes, the person can be commercially minded in the professional life, but the person has got a good cause and very charitable in a sense in his private life. Are they mutually exclusive? You talk about professional life and private life, then yes. Are they get married together? Because that's what we are concerned, right? If you're so charitable in the commercial organization, you just like Mervyn is running a business, you give your customer 100% discount, then what do you make? You're ultimately here to run a business. We're all here to run a business, right? So if someone who is not used to using this kind of tools, then you will find that, oh, are you lying? Are you commercially minded? Or you are actually charitable? One of it is true, but actually it may not be. So my point is, you can't just take results literally as it is. You really need to go and find out. And then you build that into your development tools or your coaching plan in the future. Okay, so the tool can be dangerous. You may unknowingly sieve out candidates or good candidates in the process also.
So it really goes back to the user of the tools, not the tools in itself. I think people often blame the tools when, you know, they just don't even know how to use the tools. Or they don't know, like I said, and I think to the point of AI is only effective based on the inputs that you give in. If you rubbish in, rubbish out, if you feed AI with the wrong inputs, they just give you a garbage output.
Correct. So that's actually coincide with one of Mervyn's point about you need to train the hiring managers how to interview. If you're using such tools, we also need to train anybody who is using the tool how to use those tools and the right approach towards those tools. So a lot of trainings are required. You see, some companies are very rich, they can just spend money to buy those tools. And they think, oh, they feel safe spending money to buy it. Actually, it's the most dangerous thing to spend money to buy it without knowing how to use it and how to approach it in the right way. So that one is, money is not the answer. Money can be something that leads you into a deeper pool,
a dangerous pool. Yeah, and I think there's this question like examples when virtual recruitment is successful. Am I right to say that virtual recruitment by itself is not successful, but it's more of the sum of its parts, and that sum of its parts includes the mindset of the person hiring, the mindset of his or her understanding of what the role can bring for the company. So it is literally, it should not be stand alone. Am I right to say that? Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that I mean, we have seen like Pomen said, some of the parts of virtual recruitment has already started long ago.
Right.
It's just in Singapore now, everyone's forced to do it. So you get on the bandwagon. Some of us are a little bit late. And it is the sum of all the different parts, definitely.
Yeah.
It's the training, the getting hiring managers to be able to conduct those virtual interviews effectively, asking the right questions, because virtual is a concept. It's just like my last page was the fundamentals don't change. The fundamentals of hiring don't change. You're still looking for the, of course, you don't want to look for the unicorn candidates. You know, you want to manage your sales expectations, have a structured process, and so on. Virtual is a platform.
Yep.
Virtual is the environment. So the environment has changed, but the methodology, the fundamentals hasn't really changed. Yeah. So we got to take that into mind. So there are a lot of successful examples in virtual recruitment. I mean, I have hired people in different countries as well, for myself, for my team, virtually. And some of them are successful. Some may not be. Maybe because sometimes we use certain tools that we try to find that prediction, but no, I mean, no one's perfect in hiring. If you can say that you hire 100% and you have 100% success rates and all that, I find it hard to believe as well. So, and I've seen many companies doing it as well, especially MNCs. They're very common in that area already, because they don't want to spend thousands of dollars traveling people back and forth. So it's a lot of it's done virtually.
Yeah. So I think first, the companies really have to define what is success. What does success actually mean to them when it comes to as far as recruiting is concerned? And if you ask me, I think virtual recruitment or in-person recruitment, they have their own fair share of successes and failures. I don't see so far in my experience that virtual recruiting has got a more or a higher failing rate compared to the traditional form. Again, back to how you actually select the people. It all goes down to the same methodology. If you have carved out your requirements in a good way, and you know how to select your candidates in the right way, then whether you do it virtually or you do it in person, I think there's a lot of synergy between these two processes. And as of now, back to what I said, I don't think, or I have not seen that virtual actually has a higher failing rate. It's probably, to me, around the same. And why is it around the same? Because somewhere that has gone wrong in the methodology itself.
Yeah.
That means the whole recruitment process, something has gone wrong somewhere. Right. And even if it is in-person recruitment, my own statistic is almost half, even in the traditional sense.
So I mean, for SMEs who, because I'm sure the person asking that question is hoping for sort of a magic bullet. I think most people want that magic bullet, at least, to solve a certain problem ASAP. I know this ASAP is quite a well-used word in some of the questions. With so many things that you mentioned, I mean, this is the like you say, it could be a virtual, it could be in person to sort of get the structure out. What do you think, in your opinion, an SME owner, based on his limited resources and time, should prioritize to ensure, a better hiring process? Yeah, regardless of whether it's virtually or non-virtually. Yeah, are you saying that he should prioritize defining his mindset and how he should hire?
I mean, to come to that from a SME owner as well, we often try to find the answers externally.
Yeah.
However, that answer is actually internally. That process, that methodology, and all that, we need to train ourselves. We need to train ourselves how to hire structurally and consistently. Because if you can interview 10 candidates and ask the same types of the same questions to all the candidates to find which one gives you the closest to the right answer that you're looking for to get the ideal candidate, then yes, then you're consistent. But do we do that? Most of the time, no. We ask, sometimes the chemistry is better, we tend to sidetrack into a lot of other things. And then we feel that, hey, this candidate actually did better, but it's actually not. So how do you remove that biasness and all that into play? So it's a lot internal. The tools and all that will help you to minimize that risk. Yeah. So instead of a 50-50 chances of success or failure, instead of like a 20% chance of success only and 80% failure, you try to increase it, minimize the risk to maybe a 50-50 or even 51-49. So
yeah. Yes.
You're just marginally increasing that percentage by yourself. Yeah.
I totally agree. I think the recruitment is something that there's a lot of knowledge inside. One of the things is really you need to know how to ask the same set of questions to different candidates for the same position. Like Mervyn says, sometimes we dwell into asking something that is totally not relevant. Even for me, I give you one example. When I hire sales managers, I have my set of 15 to 20 questions that I'll run through with the candidates without fail. All right. Of course, these are the questions that I accumulated myself over the years. So I wrote it down into my own little encyclopedia of questions, which I believe should help me raise my 50% chance to maybe 75% chance of hiring the right person. No, it does not. I just had a failed case. But it is one thing that I think that at least from the comparison of the pool of candidates per se, you ask the same questions. Then you compare the responses. You compare the results, especially you ask, how did you overachieve for that particular year? What did you do? So you see people have different ways or different process, different methods in approaching different customers, closing deals. They'll tell different things. And it's only when you are doing that, you can compare apples to apples. Otherwise, you'll find the comparison is extremely difficult. Who do you pick? At the end, you go back into the slippery slope. Actually, it's not even a slippery slope. The slope is so obvious, right? You pick the person that you get most chatty with. Because most like you, because chemistry is really good. Yeah. And then you've lost the focus that actually I didn't pick the person who actually can best or have the highest chance of delivering the results that I wanted the person to deliver.
Okay. And I think I also want to also remind the audiences that after, in the event that you do hire a successful candidate, right, either Mervin or Po Meng, it's also important to ensure that the candidate stays in the company. There's no point saying, yes, I finally hired. Okay, he starts on day 1, he leaves in day 20. Is that a successful hire? So I think what many, I also want to let the audience know is you shouldn't just look recruitment as simply just doing an interviewing, and then after that, you can go back to business as usual and you don't really care about, what he or she wants. Because I think one of the questions was asking about how do you, and this is a very age-old question, how do you keep employees, especially like millennials, beyond 2 years, right? And I don't think it's just based on what is done during the recruitment process in itself. There are more things to it. Do you mind sharing some thoughts on that? I think we are running out of time, maybe just 1 or 2 liners on that. Yeah.
Sure. If my only take with this is, if you give the millennials meaningful work, they will stay with you. Okay, I do have a lot of success with millennials. They stay with us. Why? Because they were not made to do things like photostating, filing, all this kind of, because they were new and because they were young. You've got to engage them to do meaningful work. So all other things, a good salary, good working environment, these are all given, good boss. It doesn't mean that these are not important. These are important, but one of the most important ingredient is all of these, actually, whether it's young or old, especially the younger ones, they look for meaningful work. They look for what is the work that I deliver that is a contribution to the company and to the world. If you can answer the question, you keep them. If you cannot answer the question and you always get them down to do all the meaningless administrative work, it doesn't mean that they don't have to do it, they will still do it. But the overriding part is how meaningful that work is. And that is also the part whereby the managers, the hiring managers, the teammates have the ability to tell the story that what you're doing is actually a great contribution to the results of the company, and what you're doing is really a good thing to the environment and to the world, knowing that how the millennials today are into this kind of things, right? What good or what contribution can they make towards the betterment of the environment, the betterment of the earth, and to the world? So you've got to be able to give it that to them. If you're not, then your chances of losing them are very high, because they're not here for the mediocre. They're here for something. Okay. And you've got to find that something.
Mervin, do you agree with that on your end?
Yes, and agree to that. It's never easy hiring and keeping millennials. It's that besides all the environment, the hygiene factors that you need to put in place. If you use that theory, is that they're always looking for the highest level of the hygiene factor. That Maslow's theory,
self-actualization,
they want self-actualization, meaningfulness, and all that kind of stuff. So, and a lot of times, none of us are trained to be able to communicate that to the staff. So it comes back to us again. We need in order to keep people like that, we need to train ourselves to be able to communicate to people like that. Your one way of doing it in the last 10, 20 years may not be effective anymore. And how do you change that? self-improvement. Yeah. So if you want to hire people who's willing to learn, you must be also willing to learn. And that is important. Yeah. And I think it all boils down to that mindset that you have as well. Yeah.
Okay. All right, gentlemen, we are slightly over time. Can I maybe just get one final closing statement from each of you, based on all the questions you've seen and heard? What would be your closing statement to sort of advise our SME friends here, to sort of give them that hope and maybe some advice as well? Maybe just one closing statement, starting with Mervyn, since you're already here.
I mean, there are a lot more other questions that I think the audience have asked, and some of it is really like how do you tips for or proper filtering and all that kind of stuff. There are I mean, asking a lot of recruiters out there, or even HRs and all that. They have a lot of tips and all that. They have a lot of success rates and in terms of hiring effectively. Learn from them. Okay, go out, reach out, learn from different people. Find that style that you have, fit it to the course that you are looking for. Always improve yourself. I mean, in the new norm or new environment, virtual or non-virtual, how we adapt to things is how fast can we adapt and how fast can we learn. And I mean, what if the worst case scenario, COVID takes another 2 years? I mean, the aviation industry is predicting another 2 more years of hardships. So how do you adapt? Do you transform, or do you just wait for handouts, or wait for things to change? So I think my last message is really, in order to do things better, better yourself, so you can get things done better as well.
Okay, Po Meng?
I think I have a similar point. One is, don't try to change the world. Try to change yourself. Don't try to change the generation of millennials. Don't try to change the picky. I've seen also the question, choosy, picky candidates. No, you cannot change them. You have got to change yourself. And then find that salient point that works for you. Are millennials picky? Yes. But if you ask me, why are we able to attract them? Because we have found the way to attract them to us. We have found the ways that we're able to keep them. Are they prescribed in the text? No. But what I've learned is that we've made a lot of adjustments from our point, from our angle, and we start to see things from their angle and from their point of view. So I think a lot of us is that sometimes we face a lot of frustration because we want things to fit into our modus operandi. We want things to fit into how the way we work. But if you look internally, your ways may not work. Like Mervyn said, in the last 10 years, yes, 20 years ago, when we go for interview, we get talked down by hiring managers. This day, you try to talk down to the candidates, say, thank you very much. And then they put a nasty remark on Glassdoor, and then your company branding is gone. Right? So what do I have to do? Even if I've seen a very nasty or arrogant candidate, also, thank you very much, we will contact you again.
If you don't say anything, they could still leave a nasty remark. You can't. It could be fake news too. Yeah.
Yes. So it is the best is that you have to adapt, and to adapt is you have to learn. To learn, you means you have to change. There's no two ways about it. No matter how old. So I'm not in the industry as a young person. I will still have to adapt to learn. In fact, I learned the most from my millennials. Why I understand them? Because I ask them, why are you like that? Why would you behave this way? You know, what do you look out for? It sounds strange, but you know, for someone, then I have to learn from people who are half my age that I can be dad to them, to learn from them actually that they have a lot to offer, but they also have their own thinking and mentality. So if you try to change them, they won't.
Okay.
So looking back, it's easier to change ourselves.
I should put your thoughts and words together with Mervyn, and we can create a book and get Times to publish it. Who knows? More people have time to read nowadays. Yeah.
If it makes money.
Only one way to find out. Okay, and on that note, I think I like the quote to better, you know, don't try to change the world, better yourself. I think that's the only constant that should continue in the future. And with that being said, it's been a real pleasure. I'd like to thank our guest speakers, Mervyn and Po Meng, so much for making time. Of course, you,
Our pleasure too.
the audience, for also making time, and I apologize for slightly being over time. But I hope with that overtime, you sort of learn additional knowledge and information. As Mervyn mentioned, if you want to know more, please reach out to either myself, and of course, Po Meng, you can find him, can write a feedback to Times, and what an awesome sharing session he made as well. And I think ultimately, keep on learning. All right. And for now, please stay safe too. Thank you very much.